You're listening to Short Inspirations from Ralph. Joy Unlimited. This word joy and its related forms, like rejoice, appear over 400 times in the Bible. It's so important that Isaiah identifies this emotion, this deep emotion of joy, as being to do with salvation. He says, "Therefore with joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation." It is the hallmark of a person who's been saved. And do you realize that joy is the prevailing culture or atmosphere of the kingdom of God, of heaven? It says in 1 Chronicles 16:27, David said this, "Honor and majesty surround him," meaning God. "Strength and joy fill his dwelling." Heaven is filled with joy. And that's exactly what God wants to do with each one of us, is to fill us with this deep thing that's quite different to happiness, even though you could argue that the two overlap somewhat. But joy is often described as a deeper, more lasting sense or feeling that arises from within, while happiness is frequently associated with external events or circumstances. It's much more fleeting. Happiness can come and go just like that. However, at times I will use the word happiness, sort of interchangeable, but it's in the context of this deep-rooted joy that we're talking about. God installed joy is there forever. Joy lasts the distance and is consistent and profound, even in the face of troubles and challenges. And I firmly believe that the darker this world gets, the more evil that prevails across our globe, the more depleted joy becomes, because lack of joy is a sign of godlessness and turning our backs on Him. He is love, and He is also joy. But joy also has this tremendous effect in our lives that we may not at first glance think about. In Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 10, he says to his people who were sad and dejected, he said to them, "For the joy of the Lord is your strength." So strength and resilience and iron in your soul comes also with this great virtue of joy. And we all long for this thing, that fleeting episodes of happiness cannot do it for us. That's why it's called the joy of the Lord. And there is this big fat clue for us as to what real joy is. And we find it somewhere in the life of a little innocent child, where they skip and play and laugh and dance as though there is no tomorrow. I remember when I was a young child, the cares, the sorrows and restraints of being an adult didn't even enter my thinking, nowhere near it. My world on our quarter-acre section or land in the hills of Dunedin was one of games, laughter, timelessness and pure delight, amongst the skinned knees and other accidents, etc. We made huts, we explored creeks, we played sport-type games at twilight in summer, and enjoyed a childlike eternity. Life, it seemed, would be like that forever. But then I grew up, and my innocent world vanished, or at least got a lot smaller. When our children were very young, I think they were much the same as I used to be. We used to play little games with them, like most parents do. Ring-a-ring-a-rosy, dances, just tossing them around on a trampoline, reading nursery rhymes and stories, cricket in the backyard, etc. But one thing didn't seem to worry them, doing the same thing over and over again. "Do it again, Daddy." Great joy was derived from the simplest of things, and repeated things at that. Somehow, I think, adults lose their childhood and then move into another world of living in transit, trying to get somewhere, waiting to begin, driving someplace, standing in line, waiting for a meeting to end, trying to get a task completed, worrying that something bad might happen, or being angry about something that did happen. Personally, I need to continue learning from a little child to keep joy alive. And I believe joy is at the heart of God's plan for human beings. I also believe that we'll never understand the significance of joy in human life until we understand its importance to God. And I suspect that most of us seriously underestimate God's capacity for joy. Jesus came as the joy bringer. The joy we see in the happiest child is but a fraction of the joy that resides in the heart of God. So in respect to this great virtue, at least G.K. Chesterton would insist that the Ralph, the little child, was a good deal more like God than Ralph the old man. And his writings, Chesterton's writings, are filled with the centrality of joy in the character of God and his plans for mankind. This is what he said: because children have abounding vitality, because they are in spirit fierce and free, therefore they want things repeated and unchanged. They always say, do it again, just like I said before. And the grown person does it again until he's nearly dead. For grown-up people are not strong enough to exult in monotony. And it's possible, he says, that God says every morning, do it again to the sun, and every evening, do it again to the moon. It may not be automatic necessity that makes all daisies alike. It may be that God makes every daisy separately, but has never got tired of making them. It may be that he has the eternal appetite for infancy. For we have sinned and grown old, and our Father is younger than we. And when we look at the Genesis week, I'm sure that God saw that it was good. When he did that, he probably did a dance. And the next day God said, do it again. And the light did it again, and God danced once more. And so on, every day down to this one. God is the happiest, most joyful being in the universe. Jesus spoke to his disciples after teaching them. He said, I have said these things to you so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. The problem with people, according to Jesus, is not that we are too happy for God's taste, but that we are not happy enough. And here's some great quotes. Lewis Smedes puts it like this: to miss out on joy is to miss out on the reason for your existence. C.S. Lewis said, joy is the serious business of heaven. Paul said, rejoice in the Lord always, and again, I say, rejoice. And you could argue with Nehemiah's words, for the joy of the Lord is your strength, that we underestimate the necessity of joy. It's not just like an added extra. It needs to be part of our inner steel, our inner being. And if that's true, joy is strength, then its absence will create weakness. Dallas Willard said, failure to attain a deeply satisfying life always has the effect of making sinful actions seem good. Here lies the strength of temptation. Normally our success in overcoming temptation will be easier if we are basically happy in our lives. To cut off the joys and pleasures associated with our bodily lives and social existence as unspiritual then can actually have the effect of weakening us in our efforts to do what is right. John Ortberg lists the tasks for spiritual vitality, and he says it's a key one, this one. We must arrange life so that sin no longer looks good to us. The time has come, he said, strange as it sounds, for us to take joy seriously. And get this, we can become a joyful person. With God's help, it really is possible. And here's some other startling advice. Becoming a joyful person does not depend on anyone else to become joyful. Not your friend, your parent, your spouse, your kids, your boss. Your joy is your responsibility. And we get a clue for the necessity of joy from the Old Testament. There was huge emphasis placed on feast days there. Times of feasting were to be transforming experiences. Celebration generally involves activities that bring pleasure, gathering with people we love, eating and drinking, singing and dancing. Spiritual celebration means doing them while reflecting on the wonderful God who has given us such wonderful gifts. It's almost as though they deliberately set aside times for celebration and joy and for gift giving, often. And we're not talking about another cheap thrill, just as Barry Maguire sang, materialistic pleasure slaves looking for another thrill. We're not talking about hedonism. In fact, true celebration is the inverse of it. Hedonism is the demand for more and more pleasure for personal gratification. and it always follows the law of diminishing returns, so that what produced joy in us yesterday no longer does today. Our capacity for joy diminishes. So, when we celebrate, we see and feel goodness in the simplest gifts of God. We are to take delight in something we wouldn't have even noticed yesterday. Our capacity for joy increases. So, how do we pursue this thing called joy? Joy unlimited. Well, the first thing seems so simple we could almost miss it. That is to begin right now. So this is the first step in pursuing it. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us what? Rejoice and be glad in it. The psalmist said in Psalm 118 verse 24. He doesn't say yesterday was God's day, how happy I was, nor does he say tomorrow will be the great day. I'll just endure until then. This day, with all its shortcomings, is the day to dance and sing and love and enjoy life and rejoice. And all of us can live with the illusion that joy will come one day when conditions change. We think we'll be happy when we graduate. We are single and we are convinced that we'll be happy when we get married. We get married and decide we'll be happy when we have children. We have children and decide we'll be happy when they grow up and leave the nest. When they do, we think we were happier when they were still at home. And this all raises a question. How can I embrace joy amid all the pain and suffering in the world? It's precisely here that we can make one of the most surprising discoveries. Often it's the people closest to suffering who have the most powerful joy. And many examples come to mind about people in prison or perhaps devoted their lives to the poor in very squalid conditions. So, true joy then comes only to those who have devoted their lives to something greater than personal happiness. That's an amazing statement. So then you could say, how can I be happy is the wrong question. How can I put myself aside, die to self, and serve God in some way? That's a great start. Today is the day. Another suggestion is to find someone who has this joy that can infect you. It's like a joy mentor. So when we are with these people, they breathe life into us. Prize them, thank them, get intentional about being around them, because there can be other people in our lives also, people who have rejected joy, who have decided to be victims. And they don't want us to be joyful either. If we allow it, they will suck the joy right out of us. Of course, we need to love people like this as much as we can, but be very careful not to let them shape us. Proverbs says, smiling faces make us feel happy. Find the joy carriers and make them your unofficial mentors. Another suggestion is to set aside time during the week. It could be a day for celebration, a day that's yours, that you can revive your spirit and charge the batteries of your life. A day to fill with pleasant things, a day of laughter, to infuse your life with good music even. Perhaps a day to get some sleep. Reflect on what a gracious God He is, to give you all the good gifts that you have. Make a list of these things. It's called gratitude. Never underestimate the importance of God-given pleasure in your spiritual formation. Here's another great one. Unplug for a week. The scriptures record many instances of people fasting from food, Jesus among them. And I suspect that if Jesus were with us today bodily, He would suggest a fast of another sort, that of unplugging our home entertainment systems and screens and TVs for a while. A number of years ago, an American newspaper offered 120 families $500 each to turn off their TVs for a month. 93 declined. The others reported that their lives significantly improved during this time, but then they returned to normal viewing after this. You never really hear people, after watching TV all night, say the next day, I feel rejuvenated, renewed, revitalized, and refreshed. When I'm using the word TV, I'm meaning screens as well. And I'm not against those things, but the issue is not what these things put into our minds, but what these things prevent us from doing. So try a week without some form of screen in front of you, except for work and emails. Use the freed up time to sleep or read or talk to God. Put more health into relationships. Finally, view life from a biblical perspective. So how is it possible to become a joyful person in a pain-filled world? particularly when you live in a situation that's very opposite to joy. You see, according to the Bible, the joy that's in store for God's people is so great that the only image that it can do it justice is the joy between a bridegroom and a bride. It's a sort of terminology at the very end of the Bible. It says there, "Let us rejoice and exult and give him the glory, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready." So we see the greatest wedding of all time. God will dance with his people. Then joy will reign undiminished and uninterrupted, unlimited. Then will be fulfilled the words of the prophet who is trying to express the inexpressible. "You shall go out with joy and be led back in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall burst into song, and all of the trees of the field shall clap their hands." The Apostle John tried this as well, tried to describe it. He will dwell with them as their God. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more. Then will dawn that great day of unfettered joy, unlimited joy and dancing that will never end. God bless you.